Hey everyone, welcome to Limitless Radiocast, episode 113. Chad and I are hanging out with Scott Burr. He's a third-degree black belt under Steve Maxwell and Rickson Gracie, as well as the owner and lead instructor of Enclave Jiu-Jitsu located in Northeast Ohio. Scott and I and Chad get into some great organic conversations about life, about jiu-jitsu, about where it was, where it's going, and how things are going with it. Scott is also a writer and editor, so we talk about some books that he's worked on as well. So you guys throw your headphones on, turn that volume up, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, this show is also being brought to you by Global Auto Detailing, located in North Canton, Ohio. They have interior services, exterior detailing services, complete detail services. You can get monthly memberships. You got to check these guys out. They are great at what they do. Warpath 55, located in Maxwell, Ohio. Lanky Fight Gear, OldBonesTherapy.com, Thomas Webb of DeHoff Realtors, Kandray Law LLC, Magic City Brewing Company, M&H Beans Coffee Company, Ronald E. Butler Tax and Accounting LLC, LimitLess Tape. Listen guys, these are our sponsors and they help us tremendously each and every week do this show, so we ask you guys to support them as much as they support us. Now enjoy the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. So Chad and I are getting to hang out with Scott Burr today. He is a third degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Rickson Gracie and, make sure I don't mess this up, Steve Maxwell. Yeah. And he is the owner and lead instructor of Enclave Jiu-Jitsu located in Northeast Ohio, correct, Scott?
Indeed. Yeah.
So Scott, man, thanks so much, man, for hanging out with Chad and I, giving us some of your time and talk jiu-jitsu life and all that good stuff.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm psyched to be here.
Yeah. I don't know, Terry, I don't know if Scott told you how me and him met the first time.
No.
I was walking around Trader Joe's. Autumn and I went to Trader Joe's and he saw my jiu-jitsu jacket. I had my black one with the Klinger logo.
The East Coast one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what started it.
It's awesome. Scott, I was just talking about last, like a little bit before we start recording, how people that don't train, have gyms, whatever, the community is kind of small, in the real grand scheme of things. And versus people outside might think the community is really big, but this is kind of how we connect, right? Like sometimes you see someone with a shirt on or a jacket or gear and you're like, hey, do you roll? Do you train, man? And then that's it. And then you kind of become connected, and then you might hook up on social media or invite to come on a podcast to talk about jiu-jitsu and life. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's and making the little connections with I used to train with this guy and I know this guy and that gym used to be there and we used to, I used to compare it to I was really into rock climbing for a long time, in college. Nice. And it's that same thing. It's there's little communities around little areas. And you'd run into the same people in different points around the U.S. because it would sort of be seasonal. Yeah. But then you'd run into people who knew people from different areas and Sure. So these little microcosm communities are kind of a fun phenomenon.
Yeah, which it makes it awesome, to be honest. Yeah. It's kind of cool to, I don't know, because we don't all go through life like that, and what this community's like. What you have to go through, when you're training in jiu-jitsu, it's extremely hard and difficult, or any kind of martial art for that matter. You know what I mean? But I think there's a connection there when you see it, because you're like, yeah, I know. You've embraced the suck. You still train, you know what I mean? It's pretty good. So you rock climb, man. How long did you rock climb for?
I was really into it in college, and then into my, early mid 20s, and then got more and more into jiu-jitsu and got farther and farther away from that. And obviously Northeast Ohio is not exactly the spot to go. Yeah,
it's not a climbing. Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of gyms now, but yeah, so each year kind of my gear sits there and looks at me accusatorily and it's when are you going to use me? And
sure.
I don't know. I should sell this shit.
What's your biggest climb that you ever did?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I went out to a bunch of cool places and did some there's biggest in terms tallest. There's
or just what was your biggest adventure climb? It could be 10 feet off the ground. Hell, I wouldn't know. But you know what I mean? But I'm familiar with Half Dome, and I'm familiar with I know who Alex Honnold is. I watched I like rock climbing. It's inspired me before I did jujitsu. I never did it. But that's why I'm just curious. Like, did you ever get an opportunity to do like a climb to where you were like, whoa, it's pretty sweet?
Well, I mean, the cool thing of the thing I often say, and this is sort of related to this idea of jujitsu and climbing being similar, is that climbing gives you the opportunity to interact with an environment in a more direct way than just as a sightseer, right?
For sure.
So plenty of people go to Yosemite, they look at it and it's pretty cool, or they visit a cool town in Colorado and they're kind of just there. They go to the shops and whatever. But when you're climbing, and skiing is the same thing, I guess. But when you're a climber, you go and you directly interact with sort of the features of that area, and then you directly interact with the community around that, and it's a quick way to plug directly in. So like I've climbed a little bit in Yosemite, nothing really huge. Climbed out on, like Devil's Tower in Wyoming.
Oh, yeah, nice.
All over the Southwest. And so getting to sort of interact with those really, iconic places and those beautiful places. I mean, those are, that's what, one of the unique things about climbing. But so I don't know, those are, I guess, big climbs.
Sure.
Big, sort of postcards of.
For sure. I mean, that's like you said, and you're immersed in that environment, that nature of it, and like, no one can show you that any other way until you have an opportunity to do that. My brother and I have it, like we wrote it down. Our goal someday is to go out to Yosemite and do Half Dome. And, nice. It's kind of like a bucket list thing. And, it's just like he does a lot of mountain biking and a lot of outdoor stuff. And I used to, not so much anymore. I have 3 kids, and jujitsu is kind of like the only hobby I have now.
Right.
Which
jujitsu tends to do
that. Sucks you in, right?
Yeah.
I noticed I use a lot of hand grip things and stuff like that. In general, like all day long, I trained to do like fingertip pull-ups. I was inspired from watching just rock climbers do it. And I was like, man, is that even possible for a guy my size? And so I did it. I was able to do it. And the benefit was the grip transition to jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, my grip strength is like really strong.
100%,
like, did that help you? Like, did you see that transition too? Because you got into it more. I mean, you're like, oh yeah, like I can kind of control grips pretty well.
I think I had really developed grip from coming off of basically really intensely rock climbing for like 5-6 years before really getting into jiu-jitsu. But I always said, like, my grip wasn't as strong as people, like, because it became a thing, like in the gym, where people were like, oh, well, Scott's rock climber grip is not, I'm not going to break Scott's grip. And I always said, it's like, my grip wasn't as good as people treated it. It was they'd try it once and be like, well, it can't work. And so it's like, it's like when you get a black belt and everything gets a little easier maybe than it was at brown belt. It was like, oh, black belt's doing it. But no, I mean, there's definitely is a foundation of, like, if you can hang on to a tiny little hold, or like, do pull-ups on tiny little pinches and stuff. That's certainly, it is interesting though, because it's like grip is very specific, right? Like, so crushing grip and pinching grip and crimping grip, these are all different, like, strains.
They're specific.
Yeah. And so, one of the things Steve Maxwell always used to say was that the more specific any training gets, the less transferability there is to it. And so, like gripping a gi, like, I guess like cat's paw gripping is very similar to crimping, but like the sort of I don't know what you'd call this, like the judo gripping is pretty specific. And then gripping a wrist, you don't find a lot of, unless you're climbing like tufas in Greece. You don't find a lot of grips on rock climbing that are like a wrist. So there's an interesting overlap, but also an area where there isn't an overlap, where the grip is just very specific to the context.
Sure. And in jiu-jitsu, I mean, a grip is only taking you so far. Like I mean,
same with climbing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Live or die. Kind of jiu-jitsu, live or die. I mean, I would grip too hard, obviously, when I first started, and Chad's like, you're gripping way too hard. You know what I mean? Like, I would get the lactic acid. My forearms would hurt for days. And, and then I would still training too, like lifting and doing a lot of that type of stuff. And I'm like, this is awful. I don't like this. And then I laid off gripping and stuff like that. And that helped a ton. Chad used to tease me.
Well, I think there's a big difference between holding the gi or holding the collar and gripping the collar, right? Just because I'm holding your collar doesn't mean I'm gripping it and ready to attack, or, obviously that comes with experience on whether you're holding or you're active or not with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I'm not gripping it the whole time, because I won't be able to do that for very long.
Yeah, and be on over switch quick. Yeah. Go ahead.
Knowing like, I don't know, what we always talk about, right? That more is not better than enough, right? Like enough is efficiency requires you to do the amount that accomplishes what you're trying to accomplish, and not way more. And we have such a tendency to grip with like
all of it,
100 when 70 or 30 or 10 would have done the job.
Yeah, right. 100%. Yeah. To get that little bit of movement, that's all you really need.
Same issue with climbing, right? Over gripping and climbing is a huge, but I mean, efficiency in climbing is in many ways literally directly a direct corollary, right? You can certainly overgrip and burn out your grips climbing in almost exactly the same way, right? Which is not better than gripping enough to hold the position or do the movement.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, there's a huge amount of correlation between the two. Because you got to be technique savvy. You got to be really good at the technique, obviously, to get better. And obviously, you're not climbing, El Cap on day 2 of climbing, and you're not beating, heck, a white belt walking in naturally isn't beating, let's just say, a white belt that's been there for 2 years. Most likely, they might be 2 bulls in a china shop still, right? But that other guy's going to know a little bit more technique, obviously, because he's been in the gym and he's learning as much. So it's a great correlation to see like those techniques and figuring it out. I mean, Chad talks about this after class a lot about, working techniques and not trying to over complicate yourself. Chad, you've said that before, like, trying to work through things,
Yeah, it's tough, as we know. Like, obviously confidence and experience come a long way, but when you're new, you're going to take whatever attribute you have, which for most people is probably strength or going hard or, whatever that is. And, you got to tone that down a little bit. But that's going to come with experience and just getting after, rolling a little more and getting some experience. And I think on the other side, like as the person getting gripped, not all grips are a threat either, right? It depends what that person knows or is doing with that grip, right? Like for me, I play a lot of guard and I play a lot of collar sleeve. So, if you don't break my grip, I'm probably going to loop choke you or something like that. But, but I'm going to be very purposeful with it. And a lot of people aren't. They're just grabbing a grip to hold on.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
That's
how it goes. It's jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah. That's it. As we say a lot, you don't know what you don't know when you start,
Oh, yeah.
Is that
go ahead, Chad.
We got some new guys that really want to compete. I know there's a Grappling Industries in Cleveland. And I'm trying to prepare them for the white belt war that they're probably going to get in, right? like you can't, I mean, it's hard to mimic that. Like even in the gym, if we go, like sometimes I'll do like Monday night, it's like, all right, guys, match of the week, you 2 are up, go. Because, when you set a timer and your friends are watching you, things change. Like adrenaline changes, your intent might change because you don't want to get subbed in front of your buddies or whatever. So I try to do it that way, but you still can't mimic that for like a stranger that is trying to choke you or break your arm, right?
Right.
You come off the mat.
Different energy, yeah.
It's a different energy. Like they come off the mat and their hands are like this and they're like, I can't move. Like, well, you got about 10 minutes and you're up again if you want. So let's figure it out. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough.
That. So I remember I trained a guy, like I hadn't done this in a while. And then I got asked by a guy to help him train he had a cage fight coming up. And it was like, I think it was his first one. And it was like, I can prepare you for like the technical part of fighting, but the most useful thing might be to try to prepare you for like the energy of somebody going at you, but like not even coming at you technically, just give you this intensity. Because the skill set of keeping your cool and staying to a game plan and managing that little that beginning part to get back to a technical fight, that's a really valuable skill set. And if you only ever train against, trained guys or in a sparring environment, you don't always get that, or you maybe only got it once before you told your training partner, hey, you need to calm down because we're just training here.
Yeah. Right.
It's like that, practicing those things they're not technically threatening, but they are something that you really need to deal with when you're actually in there. That's almost more valuable, or it's really valuable. It's really important when somebody is stepping into that context, right? I mean, when you're talking about it,
100%.
You don't need to worry about what a white belt knows. You need to worry about the fact that he's going to be going at you gangbusters, like, because he's coming. That's not. That's
no matter what. Yeah, he's putting his head down, or both you guys are putting your head down, and you're just running at each other.
It's just you've heard people say, or I've said, like fighters get mad when people call jiu-jitsu matches fights. Right? Like, you're not fighting, it's a match. And it's like, have you ever watched two white belts go at it? That's a fight. They are fighting just without punching each other, right?
Yeah, it's tooth and nail.
Yeah. And we have a competition class on Saturdays, and I do a lot of bad position stuff. Like, we're starting inside control, get out. And the top guy, usually what I would have him do is try to submit the bottom guy. But what I've changed now to be a little more tournament real is the top guy's just holding you down. He's doing anti-jiu-jitsu, because we see it so much. Like, all right, I passed your guard, I'm up by 3. I'm just going to hold you down. Nobody wants to do jiu-jitsu. Like, so we've been working that a lot, just like, you got mounted, the top guy's just going to hold you down. You need to recover to half guard or whatever you can do to start making it a match again, right? Because it happens so much, especially at the lower levels,
Yeah.
So...
You remember back when you were a white belt, Scott?
Do I remember?
Yeah.
It's a haze of ass kickings and and frustration. I remember. The feeling of it for sure.
Was there a poll? Was there someone that was like, hey, you got to come try jiu-jitsu? Or were you just like, did you see it and you were like, I got to do this? Or are you a 90s guy that saw the first UFC and was like, that's it, I got to do what Gracie just did?
No, I was one of those traditional martial arts guys who was like, nice. The UFC is brawling. It's not real.
Okay.
It's not martial arts. I was one of those idiots. So I had a background in another martial art. I was training in a Korean martial art called Kuksul-do. High school. And went away to college, was training like with the Taekwondo club there, would come home in the summers and train. And then I was like testing from, you enter into a period in that martial art where you're sort of in a testing process for black belt. And so I was testing through all that. And then when I graduated from college, I came back to Ohio, and The Ultimate Fighter had happened. Okay. And everybody at the gym, I mean, and I've said this before, but like, the Kuksul-do Academy where I was training was a really cool gym and a really cool culture. And one of the things about it was everybody really wanted to be, not that other traditional martial arts don't, but everybody wanted to have legitimate skills and be legitimate fighters, while sort of balancing that with respect for the tradition and respect for the art. And so it was kind of trying to strike this balance, which at some point you kind of have to make a decision. And but because of that spirit, when The Ultimate Fighter happened, and we actually, instead of just having the UFCs, we sort of saw, as The Ultimate Fighter was designed to do, we sort of saw, okay, look, these guys are athletes, these guys are martial artists, they're incorporating all these skill sets. It sort of made it feel not only accessible, but also like they were talking about, like, we were part of that, but we were missing part of the skill set and part of the training and the perspective. And so my coach, or the head instructor, my buddy Jason Zakrajcek, he was like, we need to start learning Muay Thai, we need to start learning jiu-jitsu. And he hooked up with, Donald Park was. So Jason started training with Donald, and then Donald moved to Chicago, and Darren Branch, who you probably know as well, took over. And so we were training with Darren.
Okay.
And then, so Darren was coming to our spot and teaching one day a week. We were going up to Darren's, and that was how we all got into jiu-jitsu through Donald and Darren.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah. We've had Donald on the show before.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very cool. That's the short version of my
that's the short version of the that's very cool. Yeah. How did you end up hooking up with Robert Drysdale? What were you going to say, Chad?
No. I thought you were going somewhere else. We'll go this first.
Oh, I was just going to ask, because I know, you collaborated or helped or I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me, like how you worked on the open closed guard book with him. For those out there that don't know about the book, I mean, it's a history book, to be quite honest. It's a book that you can study, read. You don't have to read it page for page. You can open up and read different sections, in my opinion, of reading it and having the opportunity to look at it. How did that come about?
So I had been talking to Richard Bresler. Bresler wanted to write a book about his jiu-jitsu experience. So any of your listeners who don't know, Richard Bresler was Rorien's first student in the U.S., which effectively makes him like the first student of Gracie jiu-jitsu in the U.S. And he's been training the whole time, still training. He was instrumental in helping Horien start the academy, get jiu-jitsu off the ground, start the UFC, all these things. Incredible story. So he and I had been talking about working on his book because I had a background in writing. And he had, put it out on social media that he was thinking about doing this. And I reached out and said, I can do all these things. I can write, I can edit, I can
edit. Yeah. Nice.
Design,
awesome.
I can do all these things. And so we were in the early stages of talking about that. And I flew out to LA for a variety of reasons. One, to meet with him, two, to meet with Rickson, and then, three, like there were some other people. I wanted to see Howder. I wanted to see these other people. And so
you went to LA. That's all you have to say. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You went to LA, man.
So I was at Howder's. It was me and Howder and Eddie Fivey, and you guys know Eddie Fivey?
I don't know. I don't think I know him.
So he's in, I don't remember the town, but he's in New York. He's a long time jiu-jitsu guy. He started part of like Jack Taufer, Rickson, Chris Burns, that group.
Okay.
He's part of that. I don't actually know who he's directly under lineage wise, but he was the guy he brought Rickson to New York for those couple of seminars that were like 400 plus people, like biggest seminars that had ever been at the time. And so it was just Eddie and Chris and I, and we were talking and Eddie was like, "What are you doing in LA?" And I was like, "Well, I'm meeting with Bresler and I'm meeting with Rickson, telling him about this book." And a few months later, and so, we kind of went on our way, but a few months later, he reached out to me and he's like, "Hey man, I'm talking to Drysdale, and Drysdale's trying to put this book together about the process of putting this documentary together that, the documentary that we all are so eager to see that hopefully will be coming out soon."
Right.
And he was like, can I pass along your number? I know you know how to write books and stuff. And so he actually put us in touch. And so Robert and I started talking. And when he reached out to me or when we first talked, he had like a first draft of about 70% of the story that was kind of framing. I mean, those of, you guys have read the book, and any of your listeners who've read the book, it's like telling the story of trying to make this documentary, but within that, we use that as the architecture to sort of include, because the goal with the book was, I have all these interviews with all of these figures in the jiu-jitsu community. And even if we make a 3-hour documentary, I'm going to end up using 10%.
Sure.
So I want all of these interviews to be available to jiu-jitsu people, and also available in the world so they aren't lost. If they're just sitting on my hard drive, then they go away. So we were sort of talking about, he was like, "That's my main goal." And so it's like, okay, I think this is how we sort of organized. And I think he had the idea that he was going to sort of tell the story of how he was meeting with each of these people and sort of the circumstances around it and his impressions and other things. And so we sort of had some conversations around, how I thought we wanted to think about framing the story, how we wanted to think about telling it. And then I kind of took his draft and did some editing to it. And then we put it together, and I formatted it, and we helped him publish it. And I worked on the formatting for the Polish translation, and then and maybe the Portuguese one, and I was too busy when the Spanish one came out or something.
Yeah, because those are recent, like recently. I say recent, within the last 6-8 months, I think, or something like that. Weren't those rooms released, the Portuguese and the Spanish one? Or because I think
it was it was longer.
Was it longer than
the audiobook?
Okay.
We did the audiobook more recently.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I was in the middle of doing Howder stuff, and I couldn't do that. But so yeah, that book came together really, really fast. Okay. Like, I think we had our first conversation it was literally like I had been working on, like, I did, just dozens of hours of interviews with Bresler over the phone. And then I just hammered out this first draft of that book, and I had it to him, like, I think it was on May 1st of 2020. And Drysdale, I think maybe I talked to him a week before that, and like, he got me the draft, and we hammered, and we got that book out by late September, and then Bresler's came out in November, so it was like in the middle of it was like a total sprint in the middle of that. But that was a really, really cool project.
It's really cool book. I mean, the book, what I like about it is that you can go to those interviews. Like, you don't have to go like page per page. You can, by all means, read it, left to right, page for page if you want. But if you kind of want to use it as a history of jiu-jitsu, I'm always, obviously I'm just a blue belt. But being in my time, I'm always fascinated when I take on something, or if I'm going to do something, I want to know about it. Like, I kind of want to know the history, and I kind of want to know where it comes from, and, why the whys. So when I seen his book, it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick this book up, and started kind of going through it and seeing different things. And I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. It's fascinating to get people's perspective. I mean, that's why I love doing the podcast, talking to other people's perspective. I'm seeing how they, see things from jiu-jitsu, or in general, like, what's the correlation for jiu-jitsu in life? With so many people out there where we try to convince to get on the mats don't really understand. They just think you're beating up each other. And it's like, actually, that's probably a small percentage of what you actually get out of jiu-jitsu and the whole thing. It's a great thing. Obviously I love it because I like to fight, but also I probably get more out of it in life in general than I do that part of it. You know what I mean? Like any martial art, in my opinion, that's what you get out of it. So that's cool, man. That's awesome too. Didn't know you were a book writer, editor, and designer, sounds like, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
A failed novelist turned book collaborator.
That's my wife's profession. So, she's an OU grad with, but she was a journalist, and then she went overseas and got another degree overseas, and then she came back here. We got married, and then she got her master's degree from Kent State in media management, and now she's a communications director for a college, and she's done that for a while now. But yeah, she writes, and she's her side hustle as a writer editor.
Amazing. Has she published stuff?
So because she's not going to listen to this, I'm going to say I don't know.
Oh no.
And we've been together for 20 years.
No.
But she no books. She's never published a book. Okay. But many like major articles, major big time things in that nature. That I do know for a fact, because she'll send me things, and she actually just had a huge article in USA Today.
Oh, amazing.
She does a lot of her side hustle because she's very talented and good at what she does. She'll have the opportunity where they reach out to her and, hey, we want to bring you in on this job. And so you're going to be, you're going to edit it all. So someone else might write it, or she'll do both. She'll write it and edit it. And because she's successful. So she just did a huge multi-piece on Space Force, which I thought was very kind of funny.
Oh, wow.
But it was cool because, we joke, it's like, oh, Space Force, like, like I've been around a long time, the 80s, it's like, yeah, like this is kind of funny. This is like something I see out of a cartoon or something, like this isn't real, but then, I had the opportunity to hear her interviews with the people and the young lady that she had. So it was very fascinating. Like that person worked very hard to be where they are, and they went through many things in college and so on and so forth. And I'm like, mad respect. I'm cool. Like I get it. The name and the government is what they do, whatever, but it was cool to hear her story and then to watch my wife put it into things. So yeah, that's cool. When you said really it about that's writing really and stuff, I was like, oh, there we go. Like I have a connection in some way with Scott outside of jiu-jitsu. So this is very cool.
Oh, wow.
So have you, really cool. Have you written books more than that? I mean, is there like other projects or anything that you like have a passion to want to do or?
Yeah. So there's a number of things. Put out a couple of novels, a short story collection, a couple of exercise manuals. I have a book about grip strength training, really high impact grip strength training called Get a Grip, practical primer on grip strength and endurance training and more that your listeners all want to check out. I know.
Yes.
I have I had a blog for a while that I kept talking about sort of martial arts training and fitness training and mindset stuff that I collected into a book. And then, of course, or not of course, but in the last 5 years, starting with Bresler's book, which maybe your readers know about, maybe not, Worth Defending, How Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Saved My Life, is the book Richard Bresler and I eventually wrote about his life with prior to and then with the Gracies all through, especially those sort of like iconic years in the 80s and early 90s when jiu-jitsu started, at the ground level and became, exploded with UFC 1. So that book is out. That book is kind of done pretty incredibly. But then that started off sort of a series of collaborations. I collaborated with a woman on a book about the patent system, which I sort of knew nothing about prior to that. So that was a really interesting project. Collaborated with another guy. I was a trainer to the stars out in LA, a guy named John Petrelli. So his book, Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer, and then the teen edition of Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer. Those are out. And then, nice. I've been working with, as I mentioned to Chad, the book with Chris Howder about his life and sort of crazy times and his jiu-jitsu philosophy and all that stuff. So that's what's currently on my desktop.
Nice.
Nice. We're putting that together. Yeah.
That's awesome though. But that's your, I mean, it's your passion. You know what I mean? Like not just jiu-jitsu, but like I said earlier, collaborating, networking, and giving an opportunity to spread this information out to people, because there's people that's going to read it, and there's people, it's going to change people's lives in one way or another. If they take it, absorb it, they have the right mindset to see it for what it is and really absorb what it is. I think it's important for people to get that. So good on you, man. I love people who write and have that, because I know how hard it can be. There's a lot of architecture that has to be put into it. A great word that you said earlier. And I was like, yeah, that's a great way to say writing, because there's a lot to it. It's not just, you don't just write it and it all comes together. That's not how it works.
It is not.
And I know, fortunately, seeing it, in person live at home here, and through the years with my wife, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could never do this. I joke all the time. I'm like, so I married my wife because I can't spell. People are like, what? And I'm like, I'm kidding, but I really can't spell anyway. It's awesome.
The interesting thing, and I keep trying to come up with different ways to explain this to people. But there's I think if you don't write, and if you don't write books, you sort of have maybe a big picture or a romantic or a far removed view of writing. And I think for a lot of people, that's like sit down at the computer, I sit down at the whatever, and I get inspired and I write. And once I'm done writing, I'm 90% of the way done.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, okay, you're about 10% of the way done. The bulk of your work will be done in the editing, the revising, the rewriting. I mean, that is the preponderance of the time spent. So, okay, once you've done that, great. Now you edit, you format, and you publish, and you think, I'm done. You're about 10% of the way done, because a book that you don't actually promote or share or tell people about doesn't do anything. And a book that nobody reads is the same thing as a book that doesn't exist.
Sure.
So so there's a couple of points where people don't realize that all that work is giving you the opportunity to start the actual work. And then you do all that work and it gives you the opportunity to start the actual work. So, but people are like, well, I wrote, a paper in high school and that was 5 pages and what you wrote is 200 pages. So it must be 20 times what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
No. It's exponential, man.
Yeah. It never ending. But, it's ending, but that's not even the percentage of the amount of stuff you end up throwing out.
Right.
That you're like, this is useless, or I repeated the same exact thing. Like that's what makes a prime editor, a prime person that knows what they're looking at. And they're like, wait, on page whatever that's going to be, that's the same exact thing we're saying right here. So we got to either revise that or take it out completely, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good on you. Those who do that, because it's not for me.
Yeah. Well, it seems to be my magic trick now. So it's what
Hey,
I
man,
don't know if knowing now what I didn't know then, would I pick to do this again?
I was going to say,
right.
But this is my particular magic trick, I guess.
And jujitsu.
Right.
It's kind of like the greatest of two things, for you, because look at the information you can take, and put it down. Look at where we're at now. You got, and I've brought this up on the show before and we've talked about it, look at social media. Who would have thunk that people would feel that they learn more on social media than they do coming to a gym, or they can bounce and bounce and bounce from A to B to C to D locations and think they're going to get better because of social media. You know what I mean? Or to use social media in the way to be positive, to get a good mindset and help. Like when you guys started jujitsu, so long ago, you never thought that. Scott, would you ever think that, hey, you could just get CDs and DVDs and be able to learn that way? Versus, I don't recommend it.
But you're absolutely right. The access to information is absolutely astounding now.
It's insane.
It's almost too much, right?
Yeah.
Like if you
because
you have to weed through what is good and bad. I shouldn't say bad. I shouldn't say bad, but
it's such an interesting phenomenon, right? Because it's like I think about. So like as a coach, right? You part of you sometimes wants to be like, all right, white belts, stop coming in with all these new moves.
Right.
And just listen to what I'm telling you.
Right.
Or part of you maybe wants to say, it's really good that you're, out there exploring and all this stuff. But then it's like almost from the flip side of it. When I was a white belt, I remember having so much anxiety about there being so much to learn. And having this feeling of like, I got to get my arms around this thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine what it would have felt like if I had been going through that phase
now
in today's climate, where it's not even that I want to be looking everywhere. It's like I feel like I must be, because I'm, the thing is, I remember the feeling of jujitsu is expanding outward, and I'm chasing it at a slower rate than it's expanding.
Expanding. Yeah.
And the feeling as a white or a blue belt, feeling like I got to try to catch this thing if I ever want to get a purple belt or a brown belt.
Yeah.
That was daunting. And so I sympathize with like white and blue belts or anybody today who feels like that. So I don't even know that it's good and bad, right? It's a lot of information.
It's a lot.
But maybe it's contributing to that same anxiety in a problematic way.
And that's a great way.
Maybe people just like stuff.
Yeah, sure. Wow. I'm sure that too. That's a great way to say it though. Like I never thought, like, do you feel more pressure to get through from white to blue to purple, so on and so forth now than maybe you guys did. Was there always that pressure? Like for me, you know, I'm what 3.5 years in or whatever, Chad. I'll never remember this.
Probably more than that now. Well, you started in you're 4 years in.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. February 11th was 4 years that I'm in. So I don't know, because I'm older. I was more mature when I started. I was 41 years old, whatever, and I was more mature, more understanding of life. You know, went through a lot of events in my life that kept me pretty humbled anyway, in order to go in and not be egotistical and, being angry or anything like that, or thinking I could just beat people up. So I'm a little bit different. I'm an anomaly. I think people in my age, if you start later, you probably would have a different mindset versus a 20-year-old walking through the door. And I'm wondering, now that you say it the way that you just said it, Scott, is there pressure on, do people feel pressure because they're watching so many reels, social media, to get promoted, get my stripe? When am I going to get my stripe? Because they're seeing so much, versus when you guys came up, there wasn't that access. It was, you were getting, bootlegged DVDs in order to see something new, or going up to the, Dairy Mart and buying a martial arts magazine or something.
Yeah, I think we traveled to a lot.
Or you traveled a lot, right? To do seminars and stuff like that, right?
That's what people don't do. Like, I feel when seminars are way different now. Like if we have a seminar first, it's different. It's way different. Like I would drive to Columbus to go do a George Gergel seminar by myself. Easily. And now, like when we have a seminar at our gym, whoever we might bring in, we don't do it that much anymore, because it's a cost effective thing too, right? Like it's tough to put out that money and then you got to try to make that money back. But when we have seminars, it's pretty much just my guys now. Back when we did it, it was people from all over traveling to get that knowledge and do them seminars. And I racked my brain for a while, like what's the deal? What's going on here? And what I think it is like, there's black belts at all of our gyms now, right? We're all black belts. I have 5 black belts at our gym. So I want to say the normal person that's just coming to do jiu-jitsu as that hobbyist, they don't care that this guy that we're bringing in, that we're bringing in won worlds last week or whatever he did, or he's this awesome instructor. They don't care because they have us. And it's good and bad, right? Or maybe it's not bad at all. I don't know.
But it's different. I mean,
it's different.
Weird. It's like I ran this space now is more like a private facility. Like I have a small group I train with, and then I teach privates out of here. But I ran a regular commercial gym for about 12 years. And in the course of that time, I would bring Steve Maxwell in once or twice a year, usually about once a year. And in the course of those 12 years, it was fascinating to watch. People always showed up, people always turned out. Steve was always happy with the numbers, but the challenge you could just feel. Yeah. Where year one, 2000, let's call it 2008. Yeah, it was 2008. It was like Steve Maxwell's coming in, Helson Gracie's first black belt. Oh my God, people would come in. We got to train with this guy.
Yeah.
Right.
By 2012, they're like, yeah, my coach is a black belt. I mean, it's cool that Steve's here, but whatever. By 2017, 2019, it was like, it wasn't that they didn't respect him. It was just that in an environment where I have a black belt at my school, I'm here, he's here. It doesn't matter if Steve is here because I'm worried about the guy who's going to take me to here. Plus there's all this stuff on YouTube. Plus there's all this stuff about that I don't know. Then there's cultural things about old school jiu-jitsu versus new school jiu-jitsu.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
But it now, so last month, I drove out to LA and I was setting up classes along the way, and I was, I'm trying to kind of pitch myself to these different schools and be like, okay, I'm a 3rd degree black belt under, Rickson and Steve, and I have these other black belts and I have these other teaching certifications. Here's what I could offer your students. I'm offering you this discounted rate, and nobody has to hire me to do anything, but the sort of indifference to it was surprising. It's like, I don't take it for granted that you should bring me in. But in 2010, if somebody like me had pitched you, you'd be like, what a resource. Oh my God, you're driving through my town. All I have to do is give you a couple $100 and you'll come to my school. Oh my God, yes, please. But now they're like, no, we're good. I mean, we got a black belt. Oh, I do kettlebells. It's cool. That's fine, but that's different.
Yeah.
It's just a different world.
Yeah, way different.
That, man, and so I guess that kind of circles back to the question of saying, you know, we want the jiu-jitsu community to grow, and you have your high profile grapplers, jiu-jitsu practitioners that go, oh, we're making it mainstream. But sometimes I feel like it's not becoming mainstream because of things like this, because I think it is in perspective versus the younger generation and the way it's being looked at and things like that. But guys who've been around for a long time are, you know, that's it, say it in lack of better terms, like losing that like edge to be able to go in and do this. Like, ideally, Scott, you should be able to leave from here, Northeast Ohio, drive to LA and be able to hit every spot, you know, every couple states or every state and get a seminar gig. You know what I mean? And get all the way out there. In general, you should be able to do that because of the time and the effort that you've put in. And that's not being respected anymore. You know what I mean?
Respect me more.
like as a whole, not just Scott, but
don't they know who I am?
But that's what I mean. Like, I think it's just like changing. And sometimes, I do sit and think, and I'm young in this still, you know what I mean? So I don't have a perspective.
I do wonder how much it, and this is a bigger conversation, and I guess I'm not really ready to make a general point about it, but I do feel like in a culture that focuses on asking, what do I want? You know, how can I get my needs met?
Sure.
The question of how do I actively contribute to a community with an understanding that I am bettered by that community's existence and I benefit from it in intangible and maybe less trackable ways, and it's worth doing these things even if I don't know exactly what the benefit is. But I feel like that's part of what's gone away, and I don't know how much it's gone away or if I've just noticed it more. But it's like if you want, like, okay, we have an event, it's a really cool event and nobody supports it. Well, that means we don't survive long enough to have the next event that you may be interested in.
Yeah, 100%.
You need to support the first event because of what it could become.
Yep.
Or because you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like that thing where people always go, oh, that restaurant closed. Oh my God, I love that restaurant. I love
right. It's like, well, how many times did you eat there?
Right. So
I've never been there.
I have a personal responsibility to contribute to the things that I want to have continue in my world, even if I can't say how I got my money back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or just maybe it's a question of appreciating, looking at quantifying things on other metrics rather than just like, I definitely got that move from that seminar or something like that, right?
Yep.
Like you say, I love living in a world where this project exists, where this business exists. Even if I don't love I don't love what they do. I don't even love their food, but I love the fact that I live in a community where something like that exists. Yeah. And if that goes away, I get another Chipotle, and I don't want another Chipotle.
Right,
I want
100%. Yeah.
I want to look out my window and see a more interesting restaurant serving a more interesting community. Well, then I got to go in there and spend some money.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Once in a while. I don't have to single-handedly support it, but if we all collectively agree that that's something valuable to us, it's like, you know, art house movie theaters or anything like this. So I think, especially because and I don't have the statistics to back this up, but my sense is that our sport and our art is trending younger and younger. And when you're young, it's very easy to be selfish.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know how much that mentality, people are coming into jiu-jitsu to get what they want. They want to get their training. They want to get their belts. They want to get their moves. They want to get their workout in. They want to get their sweat. Yeah. Are they asking, what am I giving? And the answer is, I'm giving my money, right? It's like, yeah, once we involve business, it gets a little goofy. But like, what am I giving to this thing that's going to make it thrive, that's going to make it continue? Because I realize I'm benefiting from it on levels that are beyond just simple quantifiable things, maybe.
Yeah, and we're still very fortunate too that we can bring in these different athletes and instructors at a decent cost, right? For the
100%.
most part, you know, besides Gordon Ryan, Craig Jones, those kind of guys,
right?
You know, but like you can get some good knowledge from some really good people. And I'm not talking like, you know, because I've done a lot of seminars and they're not all the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're a world champion doesn't mean you can teach jiu-jitsu very well.
100%, yeah.
You know, because they're athletes and a lot of, so maybe it comes simple to them or comes easy to them and they can't break it down. But yeah, it's just different.
Or the fact that the icons of our art, I mean, aside from Elio and Carlos, the brothers are all still on the mats. You can do a seminar with, I mean, Rickson doesn't really do seminars anymore, but I did a seminar with Henzo not so long ago. He did seminars with Hoyler, seminars with Helson. Like, these guys are legends. You're watching them fight, and they're like, you can go spend $50, $100, and learn from them. Are you kidding me? What an incredible privilege! What you got to take advantage of these things.
Yeah,
and even you know, like when we were coming up too. Like, I mean, I watched a lot of video because I'm that, as Terry called, and most of us are. We're that all in, right? Where we're watching stuff. But I was watching Teddy and Marcelo and Salo and all these guys, and I'll mention those names to like my guys now are like, who? I'm like, oh, I failed you. I have failed you. You don't know who Salo is. Like, but
Saturday's class is history 101.
But again, what's changed too is the TikTok, Instagram Reels thing to where it's a quick look. Let's just keep going, where we would sit down and watch a video or watch an instructional, a whole thing. You know, it's just
kind
different.
Study it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
the generational change in it. Go ahead, Scott. What were you gonna say?
No, I mean, it's like we were saying. It's like, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's just different. It's just
different.
For sure,
That's kind of how I put it too. When people ask like that kind of stuff to me in general with social media and stuff, and I go, I don't know that it's good or bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
Because there is good and bad in it. Obviously, there always is. But let's be honest, there's been good and bad in anything we've ever done. When TV was out, there was good and bad. When radio came on, there was good and bad. You know what I mean? So it's any kind of outlet to information. Writing books. Come on, we've gone through the history of good and bad, and people, you know, did whatever, burnt books for reasons of whatever their thinking was at that time. You know what I mean? So
I think if anything, it keeps us as instructors on our toes a little bit with our, you know, seeing the new stuff and guys coming in asking you questions like, what's this? And it's, you know, it kind of keeps us in the loop too. Like if you're not, right. My biggest thing now is like with no-gi being so popular, and I wish I would have dove into footlocks a long time ago, but like, I feel like when I came up, or maybe, I don't know if you feel the same, like footlocks were kind of like a no-no, right? It was kind of like, don't, you know, pass my guard and beat me like you should. Don't footlock me, right? That was kind of the thing. But now if it's a new guy and he logs onto YouTube and looks something up, he's going to see like Craig Jones heel hooking somebody. That's the first image he gets. And I've had to tell different white belts like, hey man, we're not going to reap in the gi. We want to be able to walk out of here tonight. Like, you know, so it's just having those conversations a little more often, I think, you know? So
yeah, it's good.
My thoughts. So
I'm going to circle back on the, everyone that's listening out there. So we had a brief conversation about ranking beforehand, and we weren't talking about ranking in terms of like time or how that works or anything. We were talking about the years between the black belt ranking and like how that all came about. Or we could even take that further back to say, hey, you know, who came up with the system to say, hey, you should have 3 years in, 2.5 years in before you become a blue belt, or whatever have you. Whatever, we require testing for you to go through some things so you actually know what you're doing, or whatever, you know, whatever those there. In your guys' history, have you ever heard or those? And you know, Scott, I know you have a lot of background in terms of, you know, the history and stuff like that. Chad, why don't you give your opinion first? Because I don't. That's what Scott said earlier, everybody. So I'm stealing.
I don't know a whole lot, honestly. Scott's going to have way more, you know, knowledge of that. When I started jiu-jitsu in 2004, you know, I had a traditional background, so I knew about rank as far as that went, but I had no clue of what jiu-jitsu rank was, how long it took. I just knew, you know, when I started doing gi that I had a belt that held my gi shut, right? So like, I had no clue on, you know, and I think, you know, if we talk about what Scott wants people to, you know, his students to be as a blue belt and what I want, they might be similar. They might be way different.
Sure. Right.
So it does get very subjective at that point, right? Like on that. So I think back in the day, Scott, right? Was there a blue belt and then like a Navy blue belt, right? Was like the highest.
Right. So what I always understood from the Gracie Academy in Rio, the Humaita Academy, like the original. Actually, maybe I'm using that incorrectly. Maybe they moved the Humaita, but there were basically 3 belts. There was white belts were students, navy belts were instructors, and blue belts, like light blue belts, were instructors in training, and that was it.
Oh wow! Okay.
And that I don't. My understanding, and I don't know if this was something I inferred or something I actually read, but that in 1967, when they formalized the rules for ranking, when they formed the federation, the Guanabara Federation was the first jiu-jitsu federation. So all the sort of the old masters got together and formalized the rules of competition, and formalized the rules of what the belt ranks were, what the order was, that they would have the black bar, that the black belts would have the red bar, that this is what instructor bars look like, and all this stuff. That happened in 1967, and when the foundation of that federation, the founding of that federation. And my sense was always that this had a lot to do with the fact that judo was formalizing a lot of this same stuff in this same era, because it was becoming an Olympic sport. And so there was kind of a move within the martial arts culture in general to formalize these sorts of things.
That makes sense. I mean,
the sort of the black bar on the belts was to differentiate jiu-jitsu belts from judo belts, but very directly in conversation with judo. And then when the IBJJF was created, I think the rules for ranking and time and stripes and all those things, which founded in the 90s, I want to say.
I was going to ask you, I thought if I looked back, if I recall late night Googling and going down rabbit holes as I do, I believe in the 90s is when
I think the first first Worlds was like 96 or something, right?
Okay, yeah, that's
something like that.
So there was like the CBJJF and the IBJJF were founded around that time. I mean, obviously those were the governing bodies that oversaw that was their tournament. And so my sense was that the original Guanabara protocols were updated into the IBJJF protocols. And so that's where you started seeing the 3 years between black belt degrees for first 3 degrees, then 5 years to 4th degree, 5 years to 5th degree, 5 years to 6th degree, 7 years to 7th, 7 years to 8th, and then maybe like 9 to
I know it's got to add up to it has to add up to 25 to get your coral belt, I believe, right?
So I was going to ask you if
31.
Is it 31?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, so this is what's really interesting, right? So I spent a bunch of time, I've had a lot of conversations with Steve about this, and then I've spent a bunch of time in the past few years hanging out with Michael Casey, who's a 6th degree under Helson, who's been training with Rickson. So part of our little group out there.
Sure.
And so Helson is the only one I know who uses what he is saying is the old system that his dad used, which was you get a degree every 2 years as a black belt, you test and you can get a degree.
Okay.
And then after 20 years as a black belt, you get your coral belt. And then after 20 years as a coral belt, you get your red belt.
Right.
And so Helson just promoted Jeff Hudson to coral belt.
Yep.
And so Jeff Hudson was promoted in 2003, I want to say. And so that was, he had his 20 years as a black belt, became Helson's first coral belt. I think it was Scott Devine was his second, and then Steve was his first. So Steve's sense is that, he was promoted by Helson, due for his, so we keep having these conversations. 20 years as a black belt, he's been a black belt for at least 20. So it was, he doesn't remember, did he get promoted in 2000, 2001, but it's been at least 20 years. It's been maybe 24 or 23. So the sense is, okay, due for the coral, but Steve, left Helson and went with Salo. And so it's just all good. So he's not going to get promoted from Helson.
Right.
So it's very strange to get into the sort of the minutia of how
it's very convoluted with everything, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, and plus, so Helson, your coral belt isn't based on how many degrees you have. It isn't associated, and this is what Michael's been telling me. It's not associated with a degree. It's associated with a time. So you could be an 8th degree black belt wearing a black belt, and then you would get your coral belt and you'd have 8 degrees on your coral belt. But with the IBJJF, you get your coral belt when you get your 7th degree, when you've been a black belt for 31 years.
Okay.
So,
man.
It's
wild. Yeah.
All my cursory sort of knowledge of this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, I mean, and like obviously the IBJJF added the red and white belt. Like,
yeah, that's fairly new, right?
Yeah. So that's your 8th degree is no longer a coral belt. It's the red and white belt.
Okay.
Right.
So I don't, it's that same thing of like, it's all made up. We made it all up.
Sure. Yeah. It's fascinating though, because it's like, who were the guys in those rooms like that were like, no, we can't do that. Or no, this is what we're going to do. You know what I mean? Like in general, in history, as we have it, it's always been that way. Come on. That's like, no one had one. Yes, there are some people that just directly dictated and that's the way it is. But for the most part, it's been a collaboration of this and that, and then some tweaks and changes as we go. So, and here we are today. I mean, obviously I love it. I respect all of it. I wish everyone did jujitsu. I wish it was almost a requirement for everyone to have, like jujitsu experience, because I think there's more to it. Like I said earlier about, changing your life and having a mindset. It's not just about going in and learning how to defend yourself or learning how to fight. Those are the big benefits from it, in my opinion. Those are just perks. Those are perks of doing it. It's the other stuff that takes care of everything else, and you guys talking to Chad and just, picking his brain over conversations, or we, talk about things like this and having the show. So is that your experience too, Scott? Like just in general, like the people that you've come in contact with and just seen like life-changing your own self, doing jujitsu, students maybe that you've had throughout time?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing that top of my head is like literally on Friday, I had like a week ago, I had dinner with a couple. My girlfriend and I had dinner with this couple. The woman works with my girlfriend, and then her husband, who I was just meeting for the first time, he's been training for a year at another school in town, at a commercial gym in town. Sure. Actually, that Jason Zakrajcek, who I mentioned earlier, he's running a great jiu-jitsu program. Now the Kruxeldo Academy kind of became a jiu-jitsu academy, and he's so this kid has been training over there, and to hear him talk about like where he was at in life, what he was struggling with, the things he had been going through, and then what jiu-jitsu gave him in that sort of low, dark place he was in. I mean, jiu-jitsu is an incredible tool. I mean, in the thing that keeps coming up over and over again. So I kind of every day, because I'm I'm whatever. I check the reviews of Richard's book every day to see if there's a new one. Somebody can tell me I did a good job, right? But so review after review after review, and they keep coming in, people saying, oh my God, this book speaks to me so much. And then they'll tell their own story and how much it mirrors Richard's and how much jiu-jitsu is meant to them, or how they are just starting jiu-jitsu and they weren't sure whether they were going to stick with it, but now they realize that it's exactly what they need, and they're seeing all of the benefits that you were talking about, Chad. You both were talking about that. Like that, there are the fighting part of it ends up being such a small part of it. The community, the sense of being of doing something that feels good, that's good for you, that you're intellectually challenged, you are in a direct feedback loop with your environment where you are positively rewarded for making positive changes in your life in a very direct way. That's such a powerful tool for changing your life. Whereas, so many other things, the feedback is a little more indirect, and it's like, oh, I quit drinking, but I don't know, I didn't feel that much better. But if you quit drinking and then you start and you're training jiu-jitsu, man, you've noticed what a difference.
Big difference.
So that can be such a powerful wind at your back to help support positive changes. I mean, you hear stories over and over and over again, in review after review after review, and then conversations with other people in the community again and again and again. What a positive impact it made. You hear these all the time. It made me a better person, maybe a better father, maybe a better boss, maybe a better, all these things. So yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I really I say this in like Richard. In Worth Defending, we talk about this a fair amount, and then in the actual forward to that book, I talk about this a lot. But like, jiu-jitsu has the potential to be such a positive force in society in general, and I sometimes feel like all the things that we're talking about, the TikTok stuff, the self-aggrandizing stuff, the tribalism, sometimes all these things the smack talking, they erode its appeal, they erode its positive impact. There's sort of like a darkness that mingles in with the light.
That's what I get worried about with the social media part of it.
And I'm so glad when I get to have conversations with guys like you where it's where you're saying, this is what it's about for me. This is what it's about for my students. This is what it's meant to be. This is when I talk to people about jiu-jitsu, this is what I talk about. It's not about me being a tough guy and thinking I'm doing the coolest, toughest thing. It's about what it can do for people. It gives me some hope for the jiu-jitsu culture and for the culture at large, honestly.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's where I've contemplated those conversations, on my own time. I'll do, whatever, mental thinking. And, a lot of people do this, sit around, kind of think about things, whatever, kind of go through things. And I think about those conversations of how I can convince people when I have gear on, oh, you train, but they don't. Oh, you do that, or, oh, I know so-and-so that's done that, or I've seen that before. Man, you're crazy. I can't believe you're doing it at this age or whatever. And I'm like trying to find the right conversation to tell them not just to come and show up for the reason of what they think, because that's what they're thinking. They don't know any better. So they're thinking, oh, you're going to beat me up. You're going to do this to me, or this is going to happen to me. And I'm like, that's not really what's going to happen. Like if you have a good gym, if you have great people there at the gym, they're not going to do that to you. They're not just going to whip on you, and they're going to train you and teach you because they want you to be great, because they want you to stay. You know what I mean? Like, and I've had those my own self-revolving conversations of going, how the heck do I explain this to people without going, break that's what we do. Break each other's arms off. We're a little weird. I get it. We are a little weird. It does take some weird people to come in and do what we do. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good benefits of jiu-jitsu we've been talking about, and changing your life and being healthier in this. But the best thing is the friends that you make and the people that you meet. I met Scott at a grocery store. I met Scott at a grocery store in Cleveland because I had a jiu-jitsu jacket on, and now we've been talking for an hour. Right. And I'm sure we'll talk more and, maybe hang out sometime and train, but that's the best thing you can do, is like so many different walks of life. Like I would never know Terry if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, because
100%. We wouldn't have this podcast. I mean, let's be honest, like we talked about it before.
So many good things. And I think as gyms, we have to, like, jiu-jitsu can be very culty anyway, right? We hear that a lot. And I think it's our job to like, try not to, to like, it is for everyone. You don't have to be this certain way, right, to fit in. It is for everyone. I think we do a very good job of that, at our place. So, we just got to keep it going.
And I like to believe that the majority of gyms do that. Scott, yourself, having the location that you have and the students that you have, the conversations that you have, it's not what we see on social media, like the darkness, like you said, like kind of seeping into, keeping young people cocky in jiu-jitsu world because they're watching it. So they're like, ooh, I can do that, or I'm going to be cocky. My ego is going to stay big because they're seeing the top professional athletes doing it and talking smack to one another. Well, those guys are professional athletes, and they're making a lot of money. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, they are at the top of the echelon of it. And so that's why they're doing what they're doing. And that's fine. I have nothing against them doing it. That's in their own world. More power to them, but I do want like the black and darkness of that to like not seep in so much. Yeah.
And I think one thing that social media will do for us is keep everybody honest if you're running a good gym, right? Because people typically aren't afraid of giving you a bad review or calling something out when it should. And that's okay too, because we don't want, you don't want bad things out there.
wrestlers book. I mean, they're going to be honest. Jim's the same way. They're going to be honest about who you are. Like they're ready to throw someone under the bus instantaneously, like ABC sucks. This is terrible. They have a terrible gym, terrible people there, whatever. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. And next thing you know, you're out because of one person. So yeah, truth. That's a fact. It's very good. Yeah. It's good stuff. We've had you for an hour, my friend. I do want to ask one thing because it's went fast. I want to have you on anytime you want to talk about something too. Reach out to Chad. We'll set it up. I love conversation. Obviously, this is how we always do it. This actually popped in my head this week, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring this up on the show. This is for both of you guys. Tell me the difference between jiu-jitsu and submission grappling.
One's no gi and one's gi typically is what I would say.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Just reading things. And I'm like, oh, this like someone that you're supposed to like submission grappling. And I'm watching it going, but that's jujitsu, right?
Well, I mean, it's just like, no-gi is jujitsu too, but we call it no-gi just to differentiate what it is, I guess. Right, Scott? Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at like a tournament and they're going to say like submission grappling, what they mean is no-gi.
Submission grappling, submission wrestling. Back in the day, MMA was called NHB. They called it NHB, right?
No holds barred,
right. So I think it's just terms have changed.
Okay.
It's all jujitsu.
Yeah.
It's all jujitsu.
I'm very ignorant when it comes to things sometimes. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm the guy that raises his hands. I'll ask questions. I'm like, I don't care. Like someone in here will be like, that guy's dumb. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but because everyone else in here is going to get the same answer, and they're going to be like, "Sweet, I just learned something."
Yeah,
No.
Oh man, there's such a good quote about that. Let me see if I can remember it. Jigoro Kano said, "Oh God, it's like to not know and ask may be a moment's shame. To not ask and not learn is a shame of a lifetime."
Sure.
I like that. Yeah,
I like that a lot. It's true. I teach my kids that same exact thing. I'm always on them about like, don't be afraid. I was that afraid kid when I was the kid that sat in the back of the room, head down. I didn't speak. I was very introverted. It's funny now to say, we have a podcast and chats like, and I talk all the time. I'm a talker obviously now, but I was an introvert big time. I never wanted to do anything. I had friends, but it wasn't like I was venturing out to find them. They were finding me, like I wasn't raising my hand, answering questions. I didn't speak. If I had to get up in front of the class and do anything, I was about to throw up. Like that anxiety was so, and I just learned through life events to overcome that and then go, okay, like I don't really care what people think. I want to know. I want knowledge. I want to be able to teach other people or learn that. So I'll ask those questions and I'll ask those uncomfortable questions or have those uncomfortable conversations. And now here I am, soon to be 47 years old, and things are good. Now I can't shut up. That's good.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. My dogs are at the door. They just came down and pounded right in the door. No one's here, guys. Just me. Well, Scott, thanks for your time, man. Why don't you do this, brother?
Thank you so much.
Shout out everything. I will have everything in the show notes for people to click on to be able to find you, social media, any links you want, any gear you want to support, any sponsors, anything, how to get for privates if they want to get you for seminars or anything, man. You shout out everything.
Sure. Thank you. So enclavejiujitsu.com and on social media at enclavejiujitsu, ENCLAVE jiu-jitsu. Is my jiu-jitsu stuff, all the information about me, my background, my certifications, what I can teach, what I can offer you, either like coming up here or me going to your spot, whatever. And then all my writing stuff is on scottburrauthor.com. So information about stuff, the stuff we were talking about Chris's book, links to purchase those and get more information about all those are or will be on that website. Also on Facebook at Scott Burr Author. There's a page they can follow. Also, we were talking about earlier or before the podcast started, my couple of my training partners and I started a lightweight travel gi company.
Nice.
Because I spent several years traveling. Steve Maxwell, for people who don't know, was kind of like a jiu-jitsu nomad for about 15 years. He lived in a camper van and then he just lived on the road teaching seminars every weekend. And so I would travel with him and I was always on the lookout for a good lightweight packable gi. And there had been various options through the years, and I reached a point where I couldn't find them anymore. And so my training partners and I sourced a manufacturer, and we started producing them. So that's nice. blackmarketkimonos.com. And on social media at Black Market Kimonos. So they're 10-ounce ripstop, super lightweight, dry fast. You can wash them in the shower in your hotel room and hang them up, and they dry.
That's a genius idea in my short terms of being in jiu-jitsu. That's I'm like, wow, yeah, something that's like super quick, because if you travel, go on vacation or whatever, you don't have to go. So that's awesome, man. Very cool. Good on you.
In an era of limited carry-on space and limited personal item space, it's been. I think they're really handy to have. So blackmarketkimonos.com is that,
Very cool.
Is that website. So
awesome, man.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, definitely, man. Hey, Scott, if you ever need anything down the road, if you have any topics or anything that you feel that's good and relevant, and you need to get it out there to as many people as we possibly can, hit Chad up. We'll get you back on the show, talk some more. If it's just in general, you're like, hey, man, I'm looking for a good conversation. Hit us up. We'll just talk about some more great stuff, man.
So much. Yeah. Let's do it again
definitely. Sure. Definitely. Keep up doing what you're doing, keep training, and good luck with man. God bless and everything you're doing, and stay after it. Right,
well, man. Yeah, for sure.
All right, thank Chad, you got anything?
No, man. Appreciate your time, man. I'll look for you at Trader Joe's next time I'm back there.
All right. Awesome.
Chad Nottom's favorite place.
Yep.
All right, everyone out there listening, man, appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for always tuning in and supporting Chad and I in this endeavor, in this podcast. You guys keep doing what you're doing. Take care of yourself. Be mindful of what you're doing. We want you to come back and listen every week. So, take care of that mind. Take care of yourself. Be well, be good. Take care. And we'll see you again next week. Later, guys.